Now, let's bring in a supporter of Trump's decision. Nathan Diament is the executive director for public policy for the Orthodox Union. And Nathan joins us from Washington. Welcome to you.
Good evening.
How important is this decision by President Trump for you?
Well, thank you for asking, Carol. I would say for myself, or more importantly for the community that I represent, which is the Orthodox Jewish segment of the American Jewish community, this is a very important decision by President Trump. The Jewish community in general and the Orthodox community in particular has advocated for this kind of policy from the United States government literally for more than 20 years. We were advocates for the 1995 law that was passed by the Congress during the Clinton administration that stated that American policy should be to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and that the embassy should be moved there. Subsequent to that law, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama all invoked a national security waiver to delay that actually occurring. And so we are, in general, very pleased with the policy decision that President Trump announced this morning.
What difference will it make? And let me put this on the table. Donald Trump saying we're not taking a position on any final status issues, including the specific boundaries of Israeli sovereignty in Jerusalem or the resolution of contested borders. Those questions are up to the parties involved. So what difference does this make?
Well, first of all, it makes a difference that it's a very important symbolic statement. Politics and diplomacy is very often about symbols, and I would say, the absence of this policy is what has been wrong. The United States and other governments around the world have been essentially discriminating against Israel for these past decades because they don't second guess where every other country declares their capital to be and has their parliament and has their Supreme Court and has their executive offices. That's where countries put their embassies. And Israel has been singled out uniquely to be a country where the governments of the rest of the countries of the world have not put their embassies.
But not all countries have had the kinds of disputes and fights, considering just the Arab-Israeli War of 1967 alone, in which Israel acquired East Jerusalem. That's unique to Israel.
Oh, that's certainly true, but that actually sharpens the point here, because nobody disputes that Western Jerusalem, where the Knesset is, where the Supreme Court is, where the government offices are, nobody, except perhaps the Palestinians, disputes that Western Jerusalem is and will remain, even in an imagined two-state solution, to be under Israeli sovereignty. So what possible logic is there for the American embassy not to be in Western Jerusalem?
The UN Security Council will reportedly meet tomorrow to discuss the situation, but here's what Secretary General Antonio Guterres said about Trump's move today. Take a listen, Nathan.
There is no alternative to the two-state solution. There is no plan B. It is only by realizing the vision of two states living side by side in peace, security, and mutual recognition, with Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and Palestine, and all final status issues resolved permanently through negotiations, that the legitimate aspirations of both peoples will be achieved.
What's your reaction to what the UN Secretary General had to say?
Well, first of all, I would just note that President Trump himself, in his remarks today, said that he was not foreclosing the two-state solution. He was prepared for the United States to continue to try to convene and facilitate negotiations toward a two-state solution if that's what the parties want. And second of all, from our perspective, today's move is actually potentially beneficial toward negotiations and toward a possible two-state solution. The Palestinians and the Arab governments in the region have certainly for the past, I would say, 7 to 10 years, been able to sit on their hands, stay on the sidelines, and not really negotiate towards a two-state solution. Whereas over the past decades, Israel has actually made concrete concessions towards peace. Israel withdrew from the Sinai for a peace with Egypt. Israel withdrew from, has given up some sovereignty over areas of the West Bank. for the sake of an agreement with Jordan, and to encourage Palestinians to have self-autonomy and rule in some areas. And Israel withdrew from Gaza. You'd be hard-pressed to point to a concrete concession made by the Palestinians toward negotiations and toward peace and toward a two-state solution. And I think the most important thing about President Trump's announcement today is that it sends a very clear message to the Palestinians that sitting on their hands and waiting for the United Nations or some other international coalition to deliver to them what they can only ultimately obtain by direct face-to-face negotiations with Israel and by making concessions and compromising on difficult issues, that's not going to be delivered to them. They need to actually step forward and take constructive steps, let alone stop the engagement in terrorism and the support of terrorism that is counterproductive to the potential for negotiations and a solution.
But that's not the line we're hearing from President Trump today, is it? He is saying that this is going to help the situation move toward peace. Do you agree? And if so, how?
That's exactly what I was just saying. I think we're at a state, for the 8 years of the Obama administration, the Palestinians basically had the perspective of, we don't need to do anything. The American government is going to twist Israel's arm to make concessions that will be to our benefit. Now we have a new administration, and that did not occur for a whole variety of reasons. Now we have a new government. And again, what I'm saying is, I think this is a very important message from the Trump administration to the Palestinians that they better stop looking for their path to what they think they want to achieve through various other routes. The only route to them potentially achieving a resolution that has some favorable terms for them is direct negotiations with Israel. And this move by the president puts the pressure on them to move in that direction.
Nathan Diament, Executive Director for Public Policy for Orthodox Union, thank you.
My pleasure.